dreams. For me, though, this is the last time, for tomorrow I will not be a boy. I will be something else, an animal desperate only to survive. I know I cannot turn back, and so I savor these days, these moments when I can be small, can do small favors, can crawl beneath my mother and blow on the dinner fire. I like to think I was luxuriating in the final moment of childhood when the sound came. It was like the sound of the planes that flew over occasionally, but this was louder, more dissonant. The sound seemed to be dividing itself again and again. Chaka chaka, chaka chaka. I stopped and listened. What was that sound? Chaka chaka. It was like the noise an old lorry might make, but it was coming from above, was spreading itself wide again across the sky. My mother sat still, listening. I went to the door of the hut. "Ashok, come and sit," she said. Through the doorway I saw a kind of airplane, something coming low over the village. It was a fascinating kind of plane, black everywhere and dull, unreflective. The planes I had seen before resembled birds in a rudimentary way, with noses and wings and chests, but this machine looked like nothing so much as a cricket. I watched it as it flew over the village. The sound was rich and black, louder than anything I had ever known, the vibration shaking my ribs, pulling me apart. "Ashok, come here!" I heard my mother's words, though her voice was like a memory. What was happening now was utterly new. Now there were 5 or more of these new machines, great black crickets in every direction. I walked out of the hut and into the center of the compound, transfixed. I saw other boys in the village staring up as I was, some of them jumping, laughing, and pointing to the crickets with the chopping sound. But it was strange. Adults were running from the machines, falling, screaming. I looked at the people running, though I was too dazed to move. The volume of the machines held me still. I felt tired in some new way as I watched mothers grab their young sons and bring them back into their huts. I watched men run into the high grass and throw themselves to the ground. I watched as one of the crickets flew over the soccer field, flying lower than the other machines. I watched as the 20 young men playing on the field ran toward the school, screaming. Then a new sound pumped through the air. It was like the cutting and dividing of the machine, but it was not that. The men running to the school began to fall. They fell while facing me, as if they were running to my home, to me. 10 men in seconds, their arms reaching skyward. The machine that had shot them came toward me now, and as I stood watching as the black cricket grew larger and louder. I could see the turning of the guns, 2 men sitting in the machine wearing helmets and sunglasses like my father's. I was unable to move as the machine drew closer, the sound filling my head. "Ashok!" My mother's hands were around my waist, and she pulled me with great force into darkness. I found myself inside the hut with her. The sound roared over us, thumping, chopping, dividing itself. "You fool! They'll kill you!" Who are they?" I asked. "The army, the helicopters. Oh, Ashok, I'm worried. Please pray for us." I prayed. I flattened myself under her bed and prayed. My mother sat up, rigid, trembling. The machines flew overhead, then away and back again, the sound retreating and filling my head once more. So that's like, that was one of the first kind of extrapolations, I guess, I made from the few memories that he had of that day, and it involved studying the types of helicopters that the Sudanese army used at the time, and the sounds that they made, and reading other accounts, and then of course just trying to imagine what Valentino would have been doing and thinking and saying at that time. It's pretty clear I'm not a good reader of this book, right? I don't even know if I should read anymore, if I should just talk about it, or if we should just answer questions. But what happened was we started then, and over the next year or so, we just did the basic recording of the story, and just spending a lot of time together. And even then, when we thought we had the entire story down, I still at that point hadn't figured out exactly how to tell it. I thought maybe it would just be straight oral history. And around that time, I was teaching an oral history class at the J School here at Berkeley. We were working on a book about exonerated prisoners. And so I thought, well, maybe that's enough. Maybe we'll just record Valentino's words and edit them into a book, and that would tell the story adequately. But when we did that, and I compiled all of the tapes and all the transcriptions, we found that it was very skeletal in form. It was only maybe 20,000 words, and this was everything that he could remember, without prodding in certain directions. And I thought, okay, this is really going to be, difficult. This isn't. Actually, when we went into it, I said, Valentino, I'm going to tell your story. I'm going to do it well. We're going to get it out there. We're going to tell people what happened in southern Sudan, and we're going to educate everybody so that this never happens again. When we started it, this was before Darfur. This is before the conflict blew up in Darfur. This was, 2002, and Darfur was much later, not much later, but in 2003. And so this is before we even knew the urgency of that, of being able to tell everybody that this was not only likely to happen again, but actually did happen again. And so I said, we're going to do this. We're going to arrange it so all the proceeds to the book go to you, so that you can do whatever you want with them, and you can rebuild your village, you can do anything you want. And I said, it's only going to take a year. We'll get it out there and get your story to the American public. And he said, good, good, good. And of course, it took quite a bit longer than that. And the years would pass, and I just felt so terrible, because I had made this promise to a guy who quickly became a close friend, and I couldn't figure out. We had these transcripts, and I tried to sort of expand a little bit on it and add what I could find in other research and everything, but it still wasn't enough, and it wasn't compelling, and it didn't really go beyond some of the other books that were out there, and a lot of the news accounts and what you might be able to find easily online. And I thought, all right, this isn't going to work. But meanwhile, I thought, I'm single-handedly holding up the rebuilding of Valentino's town, because I'm worried about my little artistic, needs and how to tell the story best. But at the same time, Valentino was an educator in Kakuma. He was a playwright. He put on theater productions to educate the other youth. And when he was a teenager, he was basically overseeing about 6,000 younger kids in the camp, and working as a liaison between the UNHCR and the regional directors of the camp in terms of education.